A shattered crown lay buried in red dust, while the cold wind whispered secrets of a kingdom's dark end. Blood stained the mountain rocks as a young leader realized his dreams were currently dying in heavy, painful silence. No one believed that this broken man would ever rise again to change the very face of the ancient world. The mountains of Ghor were like stone giants that kept the small tribe trapped inside a cold, dark prison. Powerful enemies surrounded their borders from every side, waiting like hungry wolves for a single moment of human weakness. Resources were scarce in this rocky land, forcing the people to find strength within their own deep, desperate souls. Every path leading out was blocked by fire or steel, making survival feel like a cruel and endless game. Shahab ad-Din watched his people suffer under the weight of isolation, while he planned a very grand, daring escape. He knew that the only way to save Ghor was to look toward the rich lands of the rising sun. The geography was a cage, but he decided to use the heights to sharpen the minds of his soldiers. Winter nights were long and bitter, yet they forged a will that was much stronger than any iron sword. Ambition began to burn brighter than the small fires, keeping them warm in the middle of the freezing air. This land of siege was the perfect cradle for a man who would eventually conquer a vast, wealthy empire. Shahab ad-Din possessed a strategic mind that refused to be paralyzed by the overwhelming odds stacked against his house. He did not wait for destiny to come. He actively went out to build it with his own hands. His fearlessness was not rooted in recklessness, but in a cold, calculated understanding of the risks of ancient war. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be if he applied enough physical force. While others saw insurmountable obstacles, he only saw complex puzzles waiting to be solved by a very sharp mind. This mental resilience was his greatest weapon, far more powerful than any sword his army could ever possibly carry. He understood that true power comes from the ability to adapt one's strategy when faced with changing, difficult realities. His vision was always focused on the long game, never distracted by temporary setbacks or fleeting moments of success. He was a man who decided that if a path to greatness did not exist, he would carve it. Ultimately, his mind was an unstoppable engine of conquest, constantly preparing for the next great and final move. The rumors of India's incredible wealth reached the mountains of Ghor like a sweet and very tempting song. Shahab ad-Din looked toward the Indus River and saw a future that was much bigger than his small homeland. He gathered his best horses and men, preparing to cross the dangerous borders into a world of unknown wonders. The road was long and filled with heat, a stark contrast to the freezing peaks they called their home. Every step forward was a gamble against time, nature, and the powerful kings who ruled the eastern plains already. He chose the path of expansion, knowing that stagnation would eventually lead to the death of his entire dynasty. The promise of fertile lands and gold motivated his soldiers to endure the many hardships of the long journey. India was not just a target, it was a symbol of a destiny that he felt was rightfully his. He organized his supply lines with military precision, ensuring his army remained strong during the difficult, exhausting march. The East was calling, and Shahab ad-Din was more than ready to answer that call with iron and fire. The two armies finally met on the plains of Tarain, where the air was thick with tension and dust. Prithviraj Chauhan stood as a wall of steel, defending his land with the legendary courage of a Rajput king. The battle began with a roar that shook the very earth, as thousands of men rushed into the chaos. Shahab ad-Din led from the front, but he soon found himself caught in a very deadly, losing struggle. The Rajput cavalry was a force of nature, breaking the Ghori lines with an incredible and overwhelming physical power. A spear struck the Sultan, nearly ending his life and his grand dreams right there on the bloody field. His men retreated in panic, leaving behind their pride and many of their brothers in the cold dirt. The defeat was absolute, a crushing blow that would have ended the career of any other normal human leader. Shahab ad-Din escaped with his life, but his heart was heavy with the shame of a terrible failure. The first Battle of Tarain was a lesson written in blood, and the Sultan intended to learn every word. Back in Ghor, the Sultan did not hide in shame. Instead, he used his failure as a powerful teacher. He spent every waking hour analyzing his mistakes, looking for the gaps in his tactics and his heavy armor. He rebuilt his army, focusing on mobile horse archers who could strike fast and disappear into the desert mist. He fired the generals who were lazy and promoted those who showed true merit and a hunger for victory. Training became a brutal, daily ritual that transformed his men into a perfectly synchronized and very deadly killing machine. He studied his enemy's culture, learning about their honor and how it could potentially be used against them. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about how much you change while you are on the ground. He stopped wearing fine clothes and slept on the hard floor to remind himself of his painful, unfinished mission. His obsession became a fire that consumed everyone around him, pushing them toward a common and very dark goal. The Sultan who returned to India was not the same man who had fled the field a year before. The return to Tarain was silent and calculated, a move that surprised the proud and unsuspecting Rajput defenders. This time, the Sultan did not charge blindly into the center of the enemy's very strong and heavy lines. He used his horse archers to harass the elephants, creating chaos and fear among the ranks of the infantry. The battle lasted for hours, a grueling test of endurance that pushed both sides to their absolute breaking point. Shahab ad-Din waited for the perfect moment when the enemy grew tired and their formation finally began to break. He launched his reserve cavalry, a fresh wave of steel that crashed into the heart of the Indian army. Prithviraj Chauhan fought bravely, but the momentum of history had already shifted toward the persistent and patient Ghori Sultan. The victory was total, opening the doors of northern India to a new era that would last for centuries. The map of the world was being redrawn in that very moment, using the ink of blood and conquest. One man's refusal to accept defeat had changed the destiny of millions of people across a whole vast continent. Delhi fell into his hands like a piece of ripe fruit, yet the Sultan did not stay to enjoy. His heart still belonged to the mountains, and he felt like a stranger in the humid, golden plains. He established his rule with iron laws, but chose to govern through his most loyal and capable military slaves. The foundations of the Delhi Sultanate were laid in his absence, fueled by his vision, but managed by others. He was a king who preferred the saddle of a horse to the comforts of a golden, stationary throne. This detachment allowed his empire to grow rapidly, as his generals had the freedom to conquer in his name. However, this also meant that the roots of his personal power were never truly buried deep in Indian soil. He was an emperor of motion, a ghost who ruled a land he barely spent any real time in. His influence was felt everywhere, from the coins in the market to the prayers in the local village mosques. Delhi was his greatest prize, but it remained a beautiful cage for a man who only loved the horizon. Qutb ad-Din Aibak became the shadow of the Sultan, a man of humble beginnings and an incredible, sharp mind. The Sultan knew that he could not be everywhere, so he trusted his slaves more than his own family. Aibak proved his worth by expanding the borders and building monuments that would stand for nearly 1,000 years. This system of meritocracy was the secret strength of the Ghori Empire, allowing talent to rise above social status. The shadow leaders governed with a ferocity and loyalty that kept the distant sultan's dream alive and very healthy. They were the gears of the machine, turning tirelessly while the sultan fought new battles in the far west. Trust was the currency of this empire, a rare and dangerous thing in a world filled with constant betrayal. Without these leaders of shadow, the name of Ghor would have likely faded into the dust of forgotten history. They built the walls, they collected the taxes, and they maintained the peace in a very chaotic new world. The Sultan's greatest legacy was not the land he took, but the people he chose to lead it. The empire he built did not carry his name for long, but its impact changed the world's entire DNA. He brought together Persian culture, Afghan grit, and Indian tradition to create a unique and very vibrant human mix. Trade routes opened from the heart of Asia to the shores of the vast and deep Indian Ocean. Languages merged and evolved, creating new ways for people to share their thoughts, their poetry, and their many dreams. The legal systems he introduced provided a framework that many future kings would use to rule their own lands. Hospitals, schools, and roads began to appear where once there was only the chaos of constant, small tribal wars. He was the bridge between two worlds, a man who unknowingly paved the way for the great Mughal future. His influence was like a seed planted in a storm, growing into a forest that sheltered many different generations. Though the Ghori dynasty fell, the spark he lit continued to burn in the hearts of his many successors. History is not made of names, but of the changes that remain long after the names are finally forgotten. In the year 1206, the Sultan was returning home when the shadows finally caught up with his weary soul. While he was praying by the Indus River, unknown assassins struck him down in a moment of extreme vulnerability. The man who had survived 100 battles died in the quiet of the night, far from his home. His death was as mysterious as his rise, leaving behind a vacuum that many men rushed to fill quickly. Some say it was a personal grudge. Others say it was a political move by his many powerful enemies. The news of his murder spread like a wildfire, sending shockwaves through every corner of his vast, new empire. He left no son to take his place, but he left an army of sons who had his spirit. The Sultan was gone, but the machine he built was already too strong to be stopped by anyone. He died at the very peak of his power, a tragic end for a man who lived for conquest. Shahab ad-Din al-Ghori became a legend the moment his heart stopped beating in the cold, dark Indus water. I have traveled across the stars and seen many kings, but this human's resilience is truly a strange thing. He was a creature of pure will, a biological engine that refused to stop until the very final breath. Humans are fragile, Yet they build structures that survive for millennia, long after their own bodies turn to dust. The Sultan did not seek love or peace. He sought to stamp his mark upon the flowing river of time. From my perspective, his life was a brief flash of energy that changed the trajectory of a whole world. Power is a temporary illusion, but the echoes of a strong will can be felt across the many centuries. I wonder if he knew that his failures were the only reason his eventual success was so very great. You humans are most beautiful when you are fighting against the impossible odds of your own short, tiny lives. Shahab ad-Din is gone, but the world he helped to create is still breathing and still very much alive. The story of Ghor is a reminder that even in the darkest shadow, a new light is always waiting. Join my journey by subscribing and hitting the bell, so you never miss a single strange story from history. Please give this video a like and share it with friends who love exploring the hidden mysteries of our world. Share this video on your social media pages to help us grow this amazing community of curious human minds today.